I'm thinking about the skills or the character traits we should be trying to develop.
Always invert and look at things from the other side, knowing that the way you want to do things is not the only way to do things.
When speaking about high net worth families, how are you using estate planning to grow?
You can't make those kind of returns with investments. So investments become the sideshow and something you need to do, but a commodity, whereas the value is maximizing what they keep, not just what they earn.
We're talking to a prospective client who, let's say they have $5 million. How would you work in vanilla and estate planning and just the explanation of it?
I do think those things should be part of the first meeting. And any time you're selling an intangible, I think your job is to identify a problem, a big problem, and show up with a solution.
So Steve, you've built and you've also sold a few RIAs, right? Actually, what is the number? Give me a quick intro to that.
I'd argue it's 2, but
okay,
maybe 3 or 4 times. So like the first one got sold. I kept running it. Nothing, no employees changed. Then it got sold again. Nothing changed. Then I left, set up advice period and sold that to Mariner, but still run advice period.
So you've got a lot of experience, a lot of history. You started doing this, was it the 90s, early 90s?
1976.
Yeah.
Yes, it feels like it. Yeah, I started in 89 with one client. Really, in 94, we became a RIA. We realized that, if you had more than, I think it was 10 clients back then, you had to register. And so we decided to turn it into a business and serve other families.
Then you've done a lot since then. As you think about advisors in today's landscape, the advisors who want to grow, what's the opportunity that we're not thinking about as we want to grow RIAs, grow our advisory business, attract new people? Anything come to mind?
I mean, it's a couple things. First of all, I think it's an unusual business because you can spend very, very little and have it grow very, very big business. I mean, you're not really required to have anything, and you don't need an advanced degree, and you just need to get a couple licenses. You can get this business. It's very, very simple. So I think the thing that people miss most is patience. This really is still kind of a business. You have to learn a lot in order to do it well. I think for the most part, people also miss what it means to be a truly holistic advisor and have depth. Like there is no, Andy Jassy from Amazon says, there's no compression algorithm for experience, and there really isn't. And so, if you're 5 years in, even my advisors, I got great guys. I just lost one of my favorite advisors. He worked on our stuff, a young guy, and he went to go to another firm because they offered him equity, and he was the second employee, and he's competitive, and he wanted to take the opportunity. My comment to him was, you ought to stay another couple of years and learn, but it's hard not to go for the brass ring. And so that's why, not because of him in particular, but I think in general, there's a desire to be an advisor earlier than folks should be, to become an expert at things they may not be experts at, and not as much patience around wanting to learn and apprenticeship.
What did you mean by it being more of an art business?
This isn't just pure science. This isn't, it can be, but learning how to communicate with people. There's a old saying in therapy, you can't be a guide to a place you haven't been. So, if you've had life events, you can talk to people about. I can talk to my clients about estate planning, as I've done my own. I can talk to clients about what it was like to go through '08, or I was working at Legg Mason on the bond desk on Black Monday. So all that stuff is information that helps form who you are. It's no different than growing up as a child. Like experiences give you context from which you can make wise decisions. And so I think the same thing is true with our business. And if it was just science, you could just remember everything and do this, do that. And there are things that clearly are math driven, but there's a lot of emotion around this. What you may think is risky, I don't, or vice versa. So that's art, not science.
It reminds me of the crystallized intelligence. I don't know if you've heard of that book, Strength to Strength, by Arthur Brooks. But there's 2 types of intelligence. The first one, I can't remember, but it's the raw horsepower. It's strongest in your 20s and 30s when you've got the processing power you're just quicker, you're faster, you're driven. But that intelligence there's a curve, there's a line where it starts to decline just as a normal human would in your 40s or 50s or whatever it is. But then there's this other line that continues to rise, which is crystallized intelligence. And that's the experience and the wisdom. And you're using the history to combine these things. And that's even more powerful. Like you just had mentioned, I guess, with the art business, the art side of things. And you kind of have to make the jump from one line to the other, is what this author is recommending for a more fulfilling life.
I think humility goes hand in hand with that. When you make that jump, realizing you go from knowing everything to realize you don't know that much, and just capitalizing on the things you do know and leveraging people who can help you.
How should we think about it as advisors? So the math side, and then the kind of the art side. It seems like the math side there's going to continue to be more and more ability for AI or technology to do the math side faster or better or 24/7 for people, probably moving forward. How do we think about training the art? What should I be doing as an advisor? What should the advisors who are listening, what should they be doing to, other than just experience and wisdom and knowledge and time? I'm thinking about the skills or the character traits we should be trying to develop. Any skills we should be really trying to focus on there?
I mean, EQ, the attribute that I admire most in people is humility. And to me, that is recognizing that there's a lot you don't know and that you can know, and there is likely a way to do things better than you're doing, and always questioning how you do things. So in our business, every year we would do quarterly offsites, but annually we had this thing where we would tear the business down to the studs. And if we could do it completely over, how would we do things? And that would shape what we would do. We had an exercise where if one of us wanted to do something, there were three, and then I actually had a fourth, a board member, my old partner. So let's say this is a true story. I wanted to start the business management business where we do bill pay and bookkeeping and all that stuff. We call it CFO services now. My partners didn't. So at one of our offsites, I was given the job of being the con. The reason we should not do this, and one of my partners that was against it had to argue for doing it. And so, the Charlie Munger quote of always invert and look at things from the other side, I think plays into that humility, knowing that the way you want to do things is not the only way to do things. And so roll that into developing EQ, and how do I interface with people? It's the soft skills that come with time and humility, I think. And so there's lots of good books on it. And honestly, nowadays with GPT, you can use it as your therapist and talk to it. This happened in a meeting, or this was my experience. How could I reframe this? And there's a lot you can learn much more quickly than reading books.
Do you think, so you're working with a lot of high net worth clients, or only high net worth clients, and there's the math side like we're talking about. How important is it to them around things like the value, like family values, or their vision for their life, or their family, or do you talk about those things a lot? Is that important to the high net worth families, or is it more just like, let's just get this estate planning thing set, let's make sure we're paying the least amount of taxes? Is there a equal weight to those, or is it the numbers is way ahead, or do they actually care about the values and mission and vision of the family?
I think they really care about it, but a lot of them don't know how to think about it. And so if you're not asking the right questions, then you're not going to have that conversation. So it might very well be, I've got 3 kids. Let's minimize the transfer taxes. Let's get as much money to the 3 kids and divide it up equally. And they think that's a fantastic plan because it's fair. It's everybody gets a third. What they don't think about is what's the impact of sudden wealth to the kids. Or what if child 1 has 10 kids and child 2 has 1 child and child 3 has 5 children? Well, assuming equal distribution of the thirds, now one grandchild is 10 times more than their cousins and 5 times more than their other cousins. So what are the implications of that? And so as you start having those conversations, you realize they really do care about legacy, because and legacy is, don't mess up my kids. So if you ask them that question, I always refer to it as leaving a loaded gun on the table. I believe my kids are smart enough that they're not going to pick up a loaded gun and point it at someone and do something stupid. But I'm not going to leave a loaded gun on the table just in case. Well, handing a ton of money to folks who are not mature enough and centered enough is like leaving a loaded gun on the table, and they don't think about it till you have the conversation with them. So I'd say it's math in the beginning and real simple, hit my goals. Then once you start helping them understand, like any good coach would, getting beyond the initial layer, you have much more meaningful conversations with those clients. And by the way, it builds a relationship that is very, very different than the traditional advisor-client relationship.
I love that. It's like I was talking to someone today about kind of the ice cream and the medicine. Like the ice cream is the thing that they want or think that they put number one, and maybe it is until it's organized and set for them. But then you're kind of slipping in the medicine into it by bringing up these conversations and talking about these things they've never thought about or thought about them in a different way. Maybe that's pretty exciting. So you're bringing into the future of advice, you're going to be teaching a few lessons or a mini course on how you're using estate planning as, from what I can tell, it's not done yet, but how you're using estate planning to grow or how you'd recommend it, maybe what you've done when speaking about high net worth families. How are you using estate planning or how did you use estate planning to grow or to start the conversation? Share a little bit about that, because that's one of the things that advisors, they might talk about it. It's usually not what they lead with, but a lot of us don't. A lot of us outsource it to somebody else to figure it out. How are you doing it as an advisor?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think most advisors, their version of estate planning is, Dave, do you have an estate plan? Yes. Okay, check that box. Let's move on. Now, how much money do you have that I can manage for you and get paid on? And some will do more, but they don't have a deep understanding. Now, hopefully this is expanding. I think it's rapidly becoming table stakes to have some version of an estate planning offering. I started out in the insurance business way, way, way back when. And the guy I worked for, who was a tremendously successful insurance agent, said, any idiot can sell you an insurance policy. They're all the same, effectively. It's understanding how to fund it and the purpose that is where the real value lies. And that started the whole process of focusing on tax. And so my pitch always was, the investing is pretty much a commodity. Structuring everything properly is where all the value lies. And if you take a look at an ultra affluent person, I can show you how we simply model it in our software. It's very easy. Or I get in a conversation, well, Dave, how much you worth? I'm worth $100 million. I said, okay, well, how long do you think you're going to live? I don't know, they're 45 years. I said, all right, well, let's assume you earn 5% a year after tax. Your money's going to triple every 15 years. So 100 is 200 is 400 is 800. 40% of 800 is a lot of money. I could hopefully get that bill down to zero. And they start focusing on that. And you can't make those kind of returns with investments. So investments become the sideshow and something you need to do, but a commodity, whereas the value is maximizing what they keep, not just what they earn. And the opposite is true, but equally important for a small client because the investing does matter, but the impact of not having a plan in place. Like if you're an advisor and you have not had to deal with an untimely death of a wage earner and a non-working spouse where they don't have the right amount of insurance, I don't think there could be anything worse than seeing someone who just lost their spouse, has no real savings, has young children, has no skills because they haven't worked in years because they've been a stay-at-home parent. And all of a sudden they're trying to deal with the emotional loss, the financial loss, having to go get a new job. Everything changes when all an advisor has to do is run a simple calculation, math, and care about more than just getting paid by managing money and making sure the client has the right amount of life insurance if they need life. And I don't sell life insurance, but making sure they have the right amount, making sure they have the right documents, because it's pay now or pay later. Pay a little bit now to get your documents done properly, or pay a lot later to have it all cleaned up because it wasn't done properly. And it's a lot more of a pain in the neck to that.
Yeah. So even for the more average advisor who's not working with $100 million clients, but the 1 to 5 millionaire or less, when thinking about estate planning, it's what you just said about life insurance. It's at least getting the documents clear and having a process to review those every so often. How does Vanilla, the estate planning software that you've got, how does that help with that not smaller, but the, you know, the $1 to $5 million client?
Well, first of all, getting documents done is super simple and very intuitive. And the advisor can either go through with the client or just send them the link and the client can go through and do all the work. The documents are outstanding. We had them done by the attorneys I use for my ultra affluent clients, built these for us, and we continue to iterate on them with the advisors that we've got. It's got a life insurance calculator, and that is always on and will illustrate for a client, here's whether you have a surplus or a deficit in liquidity for your family. So it's ever present for a client and advisor, letting them know that you've got a problem you need to address. It's always searching to identify pattern changes, or did you move to a different state and you need new documents? Kids turning 18. And, you know, I didn't, as much as I'm steeped in this, I didn't even think about when my son went to college and was playing sports, or even if he wasn't, he could have gotten hurt. And without a HIPAA release and healthcare powers, he could have gone to the hospital. They don't have to tell me anything. So making sure your adult children have that stuff in place. Even my siblings, like none of them had documents and they all had kids until I got on them about it. So I could just send them a link and they just get it done. So at the lower end, simple, make sure you got the right coverage, make sure you have your documents, all the foundational stuff. At the higher end, you can run all the calculators on the various calcs. You can see doesn't matter what size of state, the entire flow of where assets go, deal with the loaded gun issue. Like, hey, do you realize little Timmy's going to end up here with $50 million? And mandatory distributions. These are things you need to address. So it's a exoskeleton for an advisor, if you will, to help them be great at something that they probably don't have skills at.
Is there any worry or pushback from advisors who around risk, who don't know this world at all, and to be the main go-to? I know maybe they're not the go-to, but they're bringing this up, they're getting it started, or they're getting a current existing plan into vanilla so that it could be easily visualized, and then maybe they're getting those alerts that you're talking about. Hey, did you look at this? Oh, you moved 3 years ago. You didn't make any changes. Is there any, I guess, worry from advisors where it's like, that's not my lane and I don't really know that world? Can the technology really do the work for me? Or, is that question coming across the right? I don't know if I'm explaining it.
There's a spectrum, like anything, there's early adopters. And there are a lot of people who are and should be nervous about UPL, the unauthorized practice of law. The software is designed to protect them from that. So again, let's say I don't know anything about insurance, and I recognize that you have an issue. Like, hey, do you have enough money in case you pass for your spouse and kids? And you're like, I don't think so. Well, you know, all I had to do is identify a problem and send you to an expert. So same thing you don't have estate plan documents. I'm not a lawyer, but I do know where I can send you to get it done. So we have an attorney network in all 50 states that if they want to just hand it off to an attorney at a flat rate and get it done, they can do that. So they don't have to be experts in everything. But I do think it's your job to identify an issue, because what are our jobs as financial advisors? To make sure our families are financially secure. And to me, it seems like the insurance is foundational. It seems like the documents are foundational. And you don't have to be an expert. You just have to make sure you check the box and have asked the question and sent them to the right place.
Can you help me think through how would you rework it if you were me and we're talking to a prospective client who, let's say they have $5 million? How would you work in vanilla and estate planning and just the explanation of it, why this is important? Should it really be part of the core offering? How could we use vanilla at Streamline? Do we bring it up in the first meeting? How would you do that?
I mean, you don't have to bring up the software is gray labeled, so it's got your logo. So I don't know if you have to, just like if you're using eMoney or Right Capital, you know, say, hey, I use Right Capital to do this. You just say, well, I use financial planning software when we go through it. So as it relates to vanilla, I do think those things should be part of the first meeting. And any time you're selling an intangible, I think your job is to identify a problem, a big problem, and show up with the solution. So that if it's investing, it may be your asset allocation's out of whack, you don't have any international, or you have 3 stocks instead of 300 stocks, or whatever it may be, to help them diversify or save, or you don't have enough in your emergency savings account. So whatever problem you're solving for, you're identifying the risk that goes along with that problem. Like, you don't have enough liquidity. What if this happens? The life insurance one is easy. And it's the one that, interestingly, particularly if you're there with a couple, the one person in the relationship often isn't as in tune with the financial circumstances. That often may be the non-working partner. So they're the ones that are like, well, am I safe? Are we protected? So I start with questions like, hey, look, let me give you some simple things to write down. You need, if you want to retire or to protect your family, you need 33 times your spending. So how much do you think you spend a year to live the way you want a year? I don't know, $100,000. Okay, you need 3.3 million. Well, we don't have 3.3 million. How much do you have? I got 300 grand. All right, you need 3 million of insurance. Do you have that? No. Here's why you need it. That took us 30 seconds max. We go in the software in probably a minute. You could run the insurance calculator, just talking them through it. It takes about 10 seconds to put all the info in, and then highlight why it's important to have what they need to have. Same thing with the documents. Now with AI, if they do a document, you can just dump them in there and it reads everything and does an auto diagram and tells you what you've got and identifies issues. And there's actually a co-pilot. You can talk to it about, do I have the right state? Are there any inconsistencies? Are there issues we need to be concerned about? And it'll surface those. So I think it's easy to talk about in the first meeting. If it's not one of your core competencies, then take it off your website, because most people on their website say, we do estate planning, and never talk about it. And I see that over and over and over. And I think it's not fair to the consumer, because they have an expectation that for the fee they're paying, they're getting that service. So don't advertise it if you're not going to deliver it. I think it's true of anything we do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. I know that there's been a few, we talked a little bit ago, 6 or 7 months ago, and there's been a few new developments, I think, on the vanilla side, maybe some new features. Is that right? Since we talked last, you and the team have been working on, what are some of the newest things that are that have changed or improved over there?
Yeah, AI has been a game changer, and has accelerated the space, not just from how many developers you have to hire and doing that, but in terms of being able to interface with the documents, just like I just described. So the other day I uploaded all my documents. I'm happy to run through and show you what it looks like, but
Yeah.
I wanted to see how it worked on my own stuff. It nailed everything. And I've got a bunch of irrevocable and some complicated stuff in there. Not one error, which I expected errors. So it gave me a summary of everything, auto diagram of what was in there. Then I moved to the documents and I was showing it to an attorney, and I said, well, what questions do you want to know? So ask if there's any powers of appointment. And if they are they limited? Fire off the question, it gives you that. Ask if it's grantor. Tells you it's grantor and gives you all the places that make it a grantor trust. So these kinds of things change an advisor's time to value and how quickly they can impact the client around these things. That is now moving to auto profiles, where you can literally just take someone's documents, it does any kind, like it works on operating agreements and LCs, just dump everything in and it auto organizes it, draws your diagram. You hook it up to your PFM, Adipar, Orion, Black Diamond, Plaid, whatever we've got, and pull all their financial information there. And then this brain starts working where it's always looking at the data that's coming in, always suggesting ways that you can add value. And we're just starting to build those out now, and they'll just keep adding and adding and adding. And the pace of change is insane. And then all the scenario stuff we built out, from rapidly being able to show a taxable client how much impact you can have, to ongoing dialogue where the system's checking in with you and letting you know your kid's turning 18, or, there's been something in your portfolio you might be able to do something different with. So there's been just a lot of changes in terms of the functionality and the depth and the breadth.
Wow. Are you able to share your screen and show a sample?
So I uploaded these documents here. It says documents reviewed. I can go in and edit any of this if I want to put this is in a Rev Trust, or anything that I might want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Save that. I can regenerate it if I want to, but it shows everything in here, every document, who my family members are, fiduciaries, asset distribution, tax plan, for everything. I can go look at any document I want in here, and see that. So if I go from here out, and I go just to documents, I can go into any one document. I'll use my irrevocable trust, and it's all in there. So this was a decanted version, so it says it's decanted. And then I can go in and Copilot. You can see this is where I started asking people questions. So, and the Copilot extensions, which we're about to roll out, will actually have common questions and you can put custom questions in. So an advisor can look for things they ought to know. So they might not remember about powers of appointment, but they can just click on the Copilot extension and it'll ask about that. But if I ask, which I did already, is this a grant or trust? Then it already did it above it. So you can see the answer because it's thinking yes. And it tells you why these following powers make it a grant or trust.
Okay.
Or here I asked about the situs and it says who and who the administrative trustee is. So you can ask it anything and that's in there. So that was a big AI change. If I go into, let me close this out. Calculators, I mentioned the life insurance calculator. This is how much information you need to put in here. Not much.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if someone said, I need $100,000 a year and we're about to roll out 2-income families so you can see it. And let's say they have $100,000 of insurance through their family and they got $300,000 in savings and they want to pay off a $250,000 mortgage, use a discount rate there. Let's say they have 2 children. One is 12 and school is going to be $50,000 and an 18-year-old and school is going to be $50,000 because it does adjust the time value. It'll tell you have a deficit of 0.288 million. So and you can go change it. This will be ever present. If I want to show real quickly the impact of planning for a taxable client, this would go through and show them. So let's say it's 100 million, 110 million person, 10 in retirement account. And let's say they go 10 million outside their state. They just moved 10 million in cash, not super efficient. And they make $5 million a year. Then they're going to make that for another 15 years. They spend $1.5 million a year. It'll tell me I can make a gift if I'm going to use a discount. Let's say 20% is the discount. So it will adjust the gift amount, but let's say I'm going to put 17 million in my gift, and I can decide if I want to do a sale or not. And I can change all my assumptions, and it will quickly tell me in 2061 if you just do that. I didn't even do a sale in there. Is a $35 million difference at the rate of return. Year one, it's 1.36. So very quickly, I can show a client this is why I'm the best deal in town. And if I wanted to go in, add stuff to it, like a sale of 25 million bucks. And I've got the ability to do it with a discount, no discount, gift, sale, no gift, just a sale, just a gift, no sale. So I've got all of that ability. It's got guardrails so you don't make mistakes in there. So
Okay.
there's that. And the other thing I'll show you is the last thing that's pretty cool. This will be out the end of June. So scenarios. So now an advisor can build a baseline for a client, fill out the information that they want about the client, just like we showed, or it'll pull it in, decide they want to do scenarios. And we built this optimized. So the advisor doesn't have to be a genius. If they don't understand it, our AI will do all the work, or you can build something from scratch. You can do it based on planning strategies or life circumstances, and decide what strategies you want to apply. Put the dollar amounts in there, add another strategy on top of it, and another strategy on top of that. And instead of running them one at a time, this will let you compound all the strategies. And then you can just do this as many times as you want. So you can compare them against each other to see the impact and the waterfall.
So it's combining them all together, or it's showing this is strategy 1 versus 2.
Combined all together.
That's compelling. I'm going to bring it back to I'm just selfishly asking this question. So now we say we're using this, we're helping someone, and they get things a lot better than how they had it in year 1, and it was great. What am I doing a year from now or 2 years from now if I'm using vanilla as like a estate planning review meeting? Can you give me an idea of when you're meeting with a client, you've done all the heavy lifting, not many changes have happened. What's kind of the review process for looking at vanilla with a client?
What size client?
Let's do the one you were just on.
Okay. Here, I'll give you an example here.
So they're coming back in after, you've talked a few times throughout the year, done whatever meetings, and now it's estate plan review. time.
Do you see this now?
Yeah, Taylor family.
Yep. So for someone like this, we would go, all right, well, what planning have we done? We've gotten $18 million out of the estate. We started last year, let's say. We still have
Mm.
$145 million in the estate. So we're not done here. This is sample data. And so very quickly as an advisor, if I'm skilled at this, if you will, I can just look and go, all right, well, I have 18 million of exemption left. I have a lot of liquidity. I'm just going to take a bunch of liquid assets and move it out of their state, at least use up the exemption because there's still risk that it's going to go away at the end of this year.
Mhm.
If I want, I can go right into the balance sheet and say, show me everything that's inside the estate and liquid. And then I can go down and look at where the big assets are and say, well, David Taylor's got a bunch of stuff still in his name. What's that look like? Well, I can't plan with this IRA, so I could rule that out, or I could look at these various assets and decide what I want to move, including these business assets where he's partial owner in these LLCs. So in a review, we would probably start with that summary page, then go into the estate diagram. And a lot of times it's just confirming fiduciaries, who they want, where they want the money to go. So it's rendering for the first time today.
Hmm.
Take a second. It does it every day, takes all the new data that comes in, and once a day when you run it for the first time, we'll render it. So I can look into any trust and again, see all the assets inside the trust. I can see who gets what when. I can change when one person dies versus the other. You should review your fiduciaries every year to make sure, I don't even talk to Tim Taylor anymore. Why would I want Tim as that person? Or you can start going through planning or looking at the family tree and, your grandkids are turning 18. Do you want to remind your kids about that? Mm-hmm. So lots of different stuff that you can see in here, but you can see we're skipping through most of it. There's a ton from insurance to entity structure to even just, now when you want a PFS for your bank, you can just run a PFS report and you can see inside the estate, outside the estate, who the owners are, every entity. And so what ends up coming out of this is the client says, wow, I don't have to worry about this because you have all the information. And all we're doing is becoming a repository that we're building more and more info on so that the clients feel secure that somebody's paying attention to it. We've turned it into a proactive process.
Yeah, I like, and just that simple diagram, just looking at that, because that's valuable just by itself. Because you don't get that. Are attorneys asking for this? Are they?
Yeah, we have a lot of clients that are attorneys. And then our legal advisory council is one of the senior partners at McDermott, one of the senior partners at Loeb, and the founder of Accelerant, which came out of Arnold Porter. And I love the feedback. They're like, this blows me away. This is fantastic. So we're continuing to tweak it for the most complex scenarios so that the law firms want to use it as well.
That's great. Okay. And then I'm looking forward to even more details when you start to share a little bit about maybe get into the weeds for the future of advice when we get around to that. Yeah, that'll be great. Can I switch topics to maybe more futuristic thinking in industry? Yeah. I know you've got some maybe strong feelings around AUM business model. So as AI does start to do more of the technical parts, do you think that the AUM business model is going to change much moving forward over the next 5 years?
No. Next 5 years, no. It seems too short. Over the long term, probably, but it'll always be there, in my opinion, because people like to associate with, the management of their assets with the fee. Our assets go up, your fee goes up. And I think for people building wealth, that may make sense because if you're a younger client, your needs are not as complex. As you make more money, they get more complex. But I do think it creates a big conflict of interest and has advisors focusing on the wrong things. We charge a fixed fee because we believe that the services we provide are all the value. It's our obligation to provide those, and that the asset management is commoditized to a point. We still charge a little bit of a risk fee based on the size, because if I screw up $1 billion trade versus $1 million trade, the consequences are much greater. But Yeah, I'm a fan of fixed fees or something is directly attributable to the level of effort that it takes.
Hmm. Do you think some of the bigger like the big firms, Vanguard, they're trying to like they're wouldn't they want to get investment management fee down to zero just to like isn't that their goal? Or I mean, we don't know what their goal is, but it would benefit them.
Um, to get their investment management fee down, how so?
Uh, just so they have more people coming to them because it's the lowest cost and they get the financial planning as part of
Oh, I
this,
see.
but
Yeah.
the investments because they're the low cost provider.
Well, Vanguard's not a custodian, but they do want to get more assets under management, even so they're driving the fee down by operating like a they're not mutual, but operating like a mutual company. So the more they have under management, the more they can defray their costs. And so I think that is part of their proposition, but they do charge a fee for advisory services. And I think they would like to continue to expand that. I think they actually charge too little. But I think it should impact the industry because if they can get their service level to the same as somebody charges 100 basis points, why would you pay 100 when you can pay 30? And their products are outstanding.
Yeah. One of the differences we see when people are coming from Vanguard is just the lack of talking about this estate planning or tax planning. It seems to be when people bring this up, clients, they're not able to talk about it. Um, which I'm just thinking of RIAs out there, people like me, again, selfishly, trying to think of the differentiation, again, moving forward
Yep.
as all this, feels like a lot of changes are already happening and will continue to. How do we just make sure that we're still valuable in the eyes of clients as compared to these big firms? I guess the question is, how should advisors be thinking about their firms and themselves moving into the next 5 years to stay competitive, to continue to grow? Any thoughts around that?
Obviously, I'm focused on estate planning. I think those are table stakes. And by the way, Vanguard's deploying vanilla. And so are a bunch of major institutions. So as this is deployed, it's going to become table stakes. So I'd say stay ahead of the curve because you've got the flexibility as a smaller firm to make choices that larger firms take them much more time to complete.
Hmm.
Um, so I think over the next 5 years, I would focus on client service. What does a client really need? Being a holistic advisor, putting processes in place to make sure that annually the full menu of what needs to happen is done. And it isn't just managing their money. It's, making sure they have the right insurance, making sure their beneficiaries are correct, making sure they have the right documents, making sure their property and casualty insurance is done correctly, making sure that they have a letter of wishes if they want. So there's everything around their financial life and even connecting folks with them. Making sure that the lawyer and the accountant and the advisor are all talking when they need to, so it's coordinated. We got too much on our plates, and we're ingesting information at light speed. So if an advisor can create time for a client, that's valuable.
I like that. How does it look signing up for vanilla? Can you share a little bit? I mean, we could go to the website and get the demo and everything like that, but I'm not sure if it's per client or if it's annual fee or how does that work?
So today it's a per seat model, but we do have some clients on a consumption model and just rolled out Vanilla Ultra, which has more features for folks who focus on ultra high net worth clients, predominantly like family offices or multifamily offices. And we're going to have a light version ultimately for folks that just want to do basic stuff for clients. And then we have something really cool coming out, which I won't spend too much time on, but called Vanilla Ice, mainly because I wanted something called Vanilla Ice.
Was there a lot of trademark issues with that?
We
Or is
haven't
he the
done.
spokesman?
Well, I'm working on that too, but it's in case of emergency, and how that will play into this. So, lots of different ways people can pay for it. But as an advisor, go on, get a seat license, get a demo, see the product. There's a lot. It's gotten very, very deep and very broad because of the breadth of clients that we serve, and as a result, it takes some time to understand all the corners of what it can do for you. And what makes it better or worse is the pace at which it's evolving is super fast. And, I keep saying, if you haven't seen vanilla in the last 2 months, you haven't seen vanilla. And that's true every single month. So
When it comes to training, if I was getting in there and starting to figure it out, does the AI help with those types of questions? Or is it just it does?
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
Vi, our vanilla AI chatbot, you can ask it questions. It'll tell you how to do stuff. It'll direct you to the right people. It's cool. And we're looking into doing a audio version so you can just talk to it about things you want to accomplish, and it'll take you to the right place.
Interesting. What's the grand plan for vanilla? The big goals for it?
I want it to be the epicenter of where all financial participants in your life congregate. So your insurance agent puts stuff in there because they're getting information out they might not have otherwise gotten out. Your lawyer's putting stuff in. So everybody is working in that, and it's a free exchange of that information based on whatever the client wants. And I believe clients should be able to tokenize their data, who gets to see it and not see it. So that's basically what I'd like it to become, and we're heading in that direction pretty fast.
Wow. And it's not going to be the a planning software at some point in the future. No additions or anything.
Look, I'll never say never. We've got good partnerships with eMoney and some of the other folks out there. It certainly is not on our short-term roadmap or intermediate roadmap, but there's always the chance that there's stuff that they're doing that we'll do, and there's stuff that we do that they'll do, and who knows where that all ends up 5 years from now.
Anything else we should share with the advisors watching?
Just be patient and do the best job you can for clients, and make sure you're using the right tools. And vanilla is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for coming on and showing us it's a cool tool. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Awesome.